Thanks very much, Harsharatna. Just want to check, can you hear me okay? Can people wave? Fantastic. So we had a little sound glitch at the beginning before everyone joined Sanganite. So thanks very much, Harsharatna. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for reminding me about Marno's vegetarian restaurant in Ipswich, which I also have very fond memories of. I'll just quickly tell you a little story about that. My sister was a trainee social worker in Ipswich in the 1970s, and she used to write to me back in Ireland and tell me about going to this vegetarian restaurant called Marno's. And in my mind, Ipswich was like this metropolis, a bit like London or something. I couldn't quite imagine what it would be like to have a vegetarian restaurant. So it's quite interesting. I ended up living there and well, discovered its charms, even if it wasn't a metropolis. So very nice to be reminded of that as well. So I'm just going to get on actually and talk about the Mettā Bhavana this evening. So, well, it's been a very particular year, hasn't it? And over this last year, I've heard quite a few people talk about how they feel they've actually benefited from having a simpler, less frantic sort of daily life, how they've had more time to examine their inner worlds, perhaps to meditate more, perhaps to go on retreat more. And I suppose for us as Dharma practitioners, there have definitely been upsides to that. And at the same time, for many of us, this last year has also at times been trying, it's been difficult, it's been frustrating, and it's even been downright frightening, yeah. And even if we personally haven't suffered too much in terms of our health and our work, we're probably aware of other people who have. There may be people who are close to us who've been ill. We may have had to spend a lot of time planning and replanning activities that we'd normally take for granted. And we might have found that the usual things we do to support and nourish us haven't been available. So personally, over this last year, I've had really big changes in the way I work. Tiratnaloka is obviously an ordination training retreat centre. I expect most of you know that. So we had to make a switch to doing things online, which has been fantastic, but also not quite the same as living with people. Yeah. And, you know, we've had a lot of financial worries because of that. So it's been a big change for me personally in the way I work, and I've also changed my living situation because of some underlying health issues. I've moved to live in a smaller situation. So it's been, you know, a time of a lot of change and not always welcome change. So I'm guessing I'm not saying anything here that you haven't heard before, that you haven't reflected on yourselves over the last year. And I was also thinking that as humans, we're very, very adaptable. And on the surface, we can often respond quite quickly to those changing circumstances. We can adapt remarkably quickly. But I think where the rub sometimes shows up is in meditation. And for me, I've noticed it particularly, those ups and downs in my practice of the Mettā Bhavana. So I thought I'd talk about two things that I've noticed happening in my practice at times. Yep. So one thing that can happen is if I'm feeling worried, anxious, tired, frustrated, defeated, despairing even sometimes, or maybe otherwise just not particularly enjoying my current experience, one of two things can happen. So the first one in the Mettā Bhavana is that when I bring different people to mind, I can start noticing something which I call drowning happen, drowning. And so I don't know if this ever happens to any of you, but there can be things like in the first stage, I can think, may I be happy? And it can sort of turn into, I'm really not happy. That can be the overriding experience in that first stage. In stage 2, an old samskara of mine can kick in, which is like, do I really have any friends? Like, what do they think about me? Can end up feeling not that positive when I'm in a certain stage of mind. Stage 3 can feel a bit blank, and so on. So perhaps you've experienced something like this too. So in a way, I can sort of start drowning a bit in my own psychological states in a way that's not very helpful. And the other thing that can happen if I'm in a less positive mental state doing the Mettā Bhavana is that I can try and sort of force a better experience on top of the one that I'm not enjoying very much. Yeah. So I can kind of start telling myself that everything's okay, that really I'm quite fortunate. I should be glad to be in a situation where I'm not in danger. I can start trying to visualize lots of happy times with other people. I can even sort of bring in a bodhisattva to sit on the top of it all. But underneath, the mental state doesn't really change that much. So I call this a kind of reaching for the stars attitude. Yeah. So when things aren't going very well, there can be one side that tips a bit into drowning, and there can be one side that ends up sort of reaching for the stars a bit. And neither of them really feels expansive. Neither of those states feels very expansive. They both feel a bit of a struggle. So one of the things that has really helped me over the years, actually, when I struggle with the Mettā Bhavana, is turning to the precepts, yeah, the ethical precepts. And just before we started the class, Atulimati and I were just remembering, and Harsharatna, an order member called Susiddhi, who he's dead now, but he used to travel around leading study on the White Lotus Sutra. Yeah, he was really, really dedicated to it. And this particular way of practicing the Mettā Bhavana came from him via Vajratara, who I lived with at Tiratnaloka. So she said that one of Susiddhi's particular qualities is that he would just help out with whatever needed to be done. So at the center and also at the evolution shop, which they ran at the time. So he would just come in if it was needed and unpack things in the basement very quietly, just get on with it. And I think there's something about reminding ourselves about those small positive things we can do that is a very key way into the Mettā Bhavana sometimes. So in a way, I think it helps to remind me that metta isn't just about having a nice feeling, yeah? It isn't even about having an enjoyable or positive feeling. If we end up with that, then so much the better, but that doesn't always happen. In a way, it's something we do rather than just something we feel, or in Dharmic terms, it's a volition rather than a Vedana. Yeah, it's an action rather than a feeling. So in a way, we're all familiar with the 5 precepts in their positive forms. So with deeds of loving kindness, I purify my body with open-handed generosity. I purify my body with stillness, simplicity, and contentment. I purify my body with truthful communication. I purify my speech. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. And I think one can practice the Mettā Bhavana with these positive precepts in mind. Yeah. So for example, in the first stage, you can use the words of the positive precept, with deeds of loving kindness, I cherish myself. And you might think of all the little things that you do for yourself, getting yourself up, getting yourself fed, washed, getting the things that you need to get through the day, making yourself a cup of tea, getting yourselves on the cushions to meditate, getting yourself to Sangha night on a Thursday so that you can practice with other people. These are all ways in which you show metta to yourself. Yeah. And in the other stages, we can have a sense of what we can offer in terms of our ethical practice towards others, practicing generosity, interest, patience, reaching out beyond our more limited self-interest, even with people that we find difficult. Yeah. So in the context of ethics, it's really clear that metta isn't just about having a nice feeling on the cushion, it's active, yeah? And it's expressed in our skillful actions, in our practice of the positive precepts, and in our wish to be in a particular way in the world. There's a line in a poem by Rumi, which I really love, which is, let the beauty you love be what you do. Let the beauty you love be what you do. So even on the worst day, one can just practice a small bit of generosity. And in a way, we're moving towards opening up into metta. So let's just try it like that. I'm going to, in the practice, just use the words of the positive precepts to remind us in each stage, yeah? And you can use the last bit of the sentence, which I'm going to say, which is, I cherish myself, or I cherish you. So with deeds of loving kindness, I cherish myself, or I cherish you. In a way, it's hard to think of the right word. One could say love, but that's got all sorts of connotations in our language. So I'm just going to use the word cherish, but if there's something that speaks to you more than that word, then feel free to use that. So see what it feels like to do the Mettā Bhavana in this way. Yeah, I think it can really give us a sense of what we have to offer, even in the absence of feeling particularly happy at all. Yeah. The Mettā Bhavana and the precepts can be a bit like magic when they're put together, I think, in this way. So let's just prepare to meditate, get into your meditation posture. And I just wanted to say, you might hear noise in the background, which might come from next door. So please just let it pass. So preparing to do the Mettā Bhavana, maybe just take a few deep breaths. Let go of everything that's already happened today. Let go of things that are going to happen. And all we have to do is do the practice now. and spending a moment just contacting our motivation for doing the Mettā Bhavana practice. What we most deeply want. The Mettā Bhavana. So in this first stage of the practice, using the phrases of the positive precepts to have a sense of how we practice well-wishing towards ourselves. With deeds of loving kindness, I cherish myself. With open-handed generosity, I cherish myself. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I cherish myself. With truthful communication, I cherish myself. And with mindfulness clear and radiant, right now, I cherish myself. So just having a sense of our own agency in the world. Bringing to mind a friend in the second stage of the practice. Using our sense of ourselves as spiritual, ethical practitioners to understand that relationship with the good friend, all the ways in which we do and wish to behave in a metaphor way towards them. With deeds of loving kindness, I cherish you. With open-handed generosity, I cherish you. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I cherish you. With truthful communication, I cherish you. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I cherish you. And realizing all the ways in which we ourselves are a good friend. So in the third stage, turning our attention to someone we don't really know well, or even really know at all. Maybe a neighbor, someone we pass out walking, maybe someone in the Sangha we haven't yet got to know. Having a sense of ourselves as ethical practitioners in relation to that person. What we could bring to the connection. With deeds of loving kindness, open-handed generosity, stillness, simplicity and contentment, truthful communication, and with a mind free of craving and hatred. I cherish you. So turning our attention to someone we find difficult, someone we've had difficulties with. Perhaps in our heart there's a wish for connection and that's gone wrong. So using the positive precepts to set our intention of how we can be, what our attitude to the difficult person can be. No matter what's happened, no matter what they've done, we're not obliged to respond unskillfully. With deeds of loving kindness, open-handed generosity, stillness, simplicity, and contentment. Truthful communication. Mindfulness clear and radiant. I cherish you. My heart opens to you. So in this last stage of the Mettā Bhavana, allowing that sense of open-heartedness, of metta in the form of our skillful actions of body, speech and mind, spread out in all directions. To those near, those far, known and unknown. Those who are yet to be. Our deeds of loving kindness, of generosity, of contentment, of truthfulness, and of a pure mind. Transforming ourselves, transforming the world. So bringing this practice to a close now, feeling your heart awake and open. Faith and confidence in the path. Faith and confidence in ourselves.